Shalom learners, and this is your trope recap for lesson 3. By now you should be familiar with not only what trope is, but the first two trope families, etnach and katon. This trope review will focus on the Sof Pasuk family of trope for haftarah. If you're still a little confused on what trope is, or the etnach or katon family, refer to the first two reviews. Let's jump into the Sof Pasuk family for haftarah trope. Sof Pasuk is very similar to the etnach family, but with a slightly different ending. The Sof Pasuk family contains Mircha, Tivcha, Mircha, Sof Pasuk. Feel free to pause the video and try it a few times here. At the end of your haftarah, the Sof Pasuk will actually sound a little bit different and more grandiose. An example would be Mircha, Tivcha, Sof Pasuk. The trope won't always be Mircha Tivcha. I was simply using that for reference. But again, the melody will always be this. Mircha Tivcha, Sof Pasuk, for every single haftarah. Now, if you'd like, you can try the English exercise we did in class by combining all three of the trope phrases. Hello, my friends. How are you? My name is Daniel. I'm doing quite well. My name is Ilana. My best to you. May you be well. Here are a few examples to try. Pause the screen here, try and decode the words and the trope, and then fast forward 30 seconds to hear how they sound. Remember, where the trope marking is on the word is also important. That's where the movement of the melody happens. This is your answer for trope example number 1 in the Sof Pasuk haftarah trope. I'm actually going to do it two different ways. I'm going to do the first way like I taught you, and then the second way will be slightly different. It's the way that I would do it if I was reading haftarah. I'll do my Sof Pasuk phrases a little bit differently, and it's very similar to how a lot of other haftarah readers will read theirs. And the beautiful thing about haftarah and Torah trope is that you can do it slightly differently, and you'll even find that certain congregations will have their own ways to do their tropes. So I'm going to do two different versions of this. They'll be very, very similar. So example number 1, Hein habetna amcha kulanu. And example number 2, Hen habetna amcha kulanu. Now technically, way number 2 doesn't have mircha tivcha, mircha, right? The mircha that I'm doing in that one sounds like mircha tivcha, mircha sof pasuk. I took the Sof Pasuk and made it start a little bit earlier on the amcha, which isn't technically proper, but it sounds a little bit more pleasing to my ear. So in this situation, I would actually chant it like that, and it would sound just as beautiful as the other way. This is your answer for example number 2 in Sof Pasuk haftarah trope. Mi panecha harim nazolu. Again, I would probably chant it Mi panecha harim nazolu. And honestly, most people reading haftarah would probably chant it like that. If you're perceptive, by now you've noticed that all of the Sof Pasuk end with not just the Sof Pasuk trope, but at the end of a sentence with a colon. Every single time that there's a colon in the haftarahs, there will always be a Sof Pasuk. That's why it sounds like it does. Mircha tivcha, Sof Pasuk. In music, we call that resolving. Every time that the Sof Pasuk happens, at the end it resolves back to the one, or back to the root, or back to the original key, or back to this note right here that you started on. So in the Mircha Tivcha, Mircha Sof Pasuk, it always resolves and it always ends at a colon. This is your final answer, your trope example number 3 in the Sof Pasuk Haftarah trope. Go aleinu me'olam shemecha. You'll notice this one just has mircha hatibcha Sof Pasuk. And if you're having trouble with where to put the emphasis or where to have the movement of the melody, or ever remembering where it is, maybe in one of the words in your haftarah, I find a very useful trick is to actually take your hand, one of your hands, let's say your right hand in a fist, and your left hand just in a palm, and actually very lightly hit your fist to your palm every time that trope appears in your haftarah. So go aleinu me'olam shemecha, right? And then you can remember kind of where that emphasis happens. Now, I'm also going to do an example of how this trope would sound at the very end of a haftarah. So if you want to pause it here and maybe look at it and try and do it yourself before I give you the answer, I'm going to now do this same phrase like it were at the very end of a haftarah with the mircha tibcha Sof Pasuk trope. And remember, this is the same for every single haftarah. Go aleinu me'olam shemecha.